name is Jerry White. I am a retired naval officer and former member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I bought in a sextant. The particular one that I bought in is a German naval sextant from the Second World War era.
Imperial German naval submarines, or U-boats, were a powerful force that prowled the waters throughout the Battle of the Atlantic. First introduced during the Great War, U-boats were a primary source of peril between 1939 and 1945, stalking Allied merchant ships in the North Atlantic, moving in groups called wolf packs. The Germans, like all submariners, relied on special navigation techniques to produce highly accurate positioning during their hunt. The instrument of choice was the sextant, which provided angular distance between two objects and allowed users to determine latitude by relating celestial bodies to the horizon. Since its inception in 1731, sextant technology has never depended on a power source and, despite its age, serves as a navigational safety net for many sailors today, including the Royal Canadian Navy.
Hi Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jennifer.
What have you brought us today?
It is a sextant. It is a primary navigational aid for celestial astronavigation.
And what is unique about this particular piece?
This particular sextant, you'll notice on it there's a German eagle and a swastika and the Wehrmacht symbol on it. This particular sextant was used by a German U-boat commander in the Second World War. During the Battle of the Atlantic and any other operations before, during, or since, if there was an interaction between an Allied ship and a German submarine, if they torpedoed a ship, they would have had to surface. If it was nighttime, they would have had to do a star sight. If it was daytime, they would have had to use a sun sight.
Most sextants are made of brass. This one doesn't seem to be made of brass, and why is that?
These were mass-produced like everything else on both sides during the Second World War. But these are made of an alloy that is actually more rigid than brass, but they were using all the brass to make shells. Sextant could be made of something else, so they didn't want to use brass.
Jerry, how did you acquire the sextant?
I have a friend whose father was a destroyer captain, and to the best of my knowledge, a U-boat surrendered in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, and when it surrendered, it was just seized. It was taken, and he bequeathed it to me because he knew I would take proper care of it. This would have been drawn from the company in Germany that manufactures them, Plath, and they still manufacture sextants. It would have been drawn by Admiral Eric Rader's or Admiral Carl Dunitz's staff, either one of them, and then given to the commander of the U-boat, probably by Carl Dunitz himself, who was the father of the Second World War German U-boat fleet.
I always find U-boat artifacts very fascinating. U-boats were a very elite fighting machine. At the beginning of the war in 1939, Hitler had quite a fleet of them, and he deployed them on the Atlantic to attack Allied convoys crossing the Atlantic from Halifax, from New York, all the way to Britain and Ireland and beyond to supply the Allies. In fact, famously, Karl Dutz had actually asked Hitler, well, give me more boats and I will dominate the Atlantic and we'll win this war.
Glad he didn't.
And I'm glad he didn't. You're right, because he didn't get the boat. Slowly but surely, the Allies were able to beat back the U-boat menace on the Atlantic. So Jerry, you obviously have a lot of experience using this piece of equipment. Can you tell me why you would prefer to use a sextant than perhaps modern GPS or other types of navigation equipment?
Sure, Jennifer. I carry one of these in my boat if I was going on a long trip. I have tons of navigation equipment. I have AIS, I have GPS, I have chart plotter. They're all modern technology. And they all use electricity. And they are all subject to all sorts of breakdown. This is not. If I'm out at sea, I need to know exactly where I am. This will not break. It doesn't take batteries. I can take this out of the box at any time, point it at the sun, and take a sun line, and I will know exactly what latitude I am at, and I have a rough idea what longitude I am at. and then all you do is move your line up, and I will have an exact position, every bit as accurate as a position that a GPS would give me, and I don't have to worry about it breaking. This is probably close to 100 years old. It was used in 1939. It would probably have been manufactured around 1925 to 1935. So this is almost 100 years old, and it is as accurate and true, and the wheel is as precise as it was when it was built. And the stars don't move, and I don't need electricity, I don't need batteries. This is probably one of the most efficient and definitely the most accurate piece of navigational equipment ever designed. And it will be 100 years from now.
Jerry, what are your future plans for this artifact?
This is a rather unique artifact in that it represents a rather dark period in history, one which young people today either don't know about, or there are actually some people who don't believe it happened. This, I believe, should serve as a reminder that if we don't pay attention to the past, we're going to make the same mistakes in the future. When I reach my expiry date, I would like to have it placed somewhere where it can be available for people to see. Your museum would be a fine example of where it might end up.
Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for bringing this beautiful artifact in for us to see.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My initial thoughts were, what a unique artifact. As it's been pointed out, it is a very rare artifact to have, and it represents a very unique part of our naval history. U-boats were a very formidable force on the Atlantic, and that story about fighting the U-boats on the Atlantic and getting the supplies and the troops to the Allied forces in Europe is such an important story to tell.